his neck, even though he got more chins than I do. Oh God, Tony just wants to beat the shit out of Don Callis, and I'm just seeing the 25th Suicide Dive plus a Canadian Destroyer. They're marking themselves so out right now. You can see why we don't have that much of a casual fan base. I'm sorry, folks. Just it's fun to always mimic Jim Ross's voice, but this is big news, and this is over Jim Ross conducting a bit of heat over his common complaint over the current wrestling product, and I have made rant videos over the current landscape of how the quality of the in-ring product has technically diminished into guys going for highly choreographed spots, consistent no-sellings, disregarding the use of a finish, their finishers being false count, just false finish BS that goes into a 20-minute match, even though most of these guys don't even know, most of these fans don't know who these guys are. And out of most of Jim Ross, he's just doing this job so he can stick it over to WWE, that he can just go to his second best promotion and still commentate. And yes, his commentary skills has diminished, but over most of the time, you suspect a guy of his tenure, his experience in the business. He knows how finishes are done. He knows how companies get success, and he's been parts of when professional wrestling was in the most pop culture relevance in the country, and primarily the entire world. So you're telling me Brandon Cutler, this nerded out Dungeon and Dragon taking up the ass jobber, comes around complaining over that that we'll take a suicide dive hand in hand, and you'll have to watch it on Dynamite. You're not even on Dynamite, Brandon. You're never on Dynamite. You're like a cordial jobber that cameos sometimes on Dynamite because you're friends with the Young Bucks and nothing more. Your matches are minimal, simplistic, indie schlock garbage that you primarily job out to get no semblance of sympathy with the casual audience of a WNBA playoff game. There's no, suitable, guys with tough skin in the wrestling business. And I've been hearing these complaints for years, and I hate to hear, men that take bumps every week coming around, getting injured, taking time off the road, away from family and friends, to do what they have to do to get money. You suspect something like that, where you have to take a lot of sacrifices while getting hurt, while getting paid, and have to outdo each other to be such a pussy and not take advice or at least an opinion as good as, from Jim freaking Ross. This guy had his own mom died, and the guy still came off to do work. The guy had cerebral palsy and still came to do work. I don't know why is it so hard for you to take criticism to actually have a match actually look legit. That's embarrassing. Even for you, Brandon. Your jobber matches coming around doing the same indie schlockage BS with your minimalist storytelling, with the only relevance is either you guys coming from WWE or Japan. And Jim Ross want to be like, what about we make it less no-silly? Actually have our moves actually diminish a bit of a finish. We actually bring more storyline oriental value into the show. And actually make sure that we don't have a bunch of indie retards in our television program to actually have some mainstream appeal. Because AEW has potential, and if Jim Ross is being outspoken like this, that shows that he at least has some semblance of concern to make sure that AEW performs well, or else end up like what NWA Power was, falling off a tiny bit. Impact was coming from second best in the company, getting guys like Kurt Angle and Sting, to diminishing over to an indie fed where they have Rich Swann as a champion, a world champion, mind you. Lucha Underground, nearly everybody's gone. That thing has literally got snapped out of existence. And if you're not taking any of opinions from a guy like Jim Ross, I think there's a major problem. And especially coming from the person out speaking out of this is a guy like freaking Brandon Cutler, where you're not even given that much TV time. Your indie schlock performance is obviously not getting you that much notoriety, and nobody was even speaking of you at that point. There's no reason why you're even trying to talk back to a guy like Jim Ross. Especially when you're not the major reason why people come to watch. So why is he talking? It's the dumbest thing in the world, especially when some man like Jim Ross is giving you an opinion for your goddamn company that can barely even reach 1 million viewers. And you guys had Sting. You guys have Sting, Shaquille O'Neal, like pop culture icons coming over to your Fed just so you guys can at least have some semblance of mainstream notoriety, or at least some figures coming over there, because they know that some of their actual stars they have in the company can't draw. Kenny Omega is doing some jobber indie schlock trying to like revive Bullet Club with his 60-minute work rate BS on Impact. Miro's a gamer, even though he was literally like a Euro madman, like destroying everybody in his path with a hot chick as his manager, and like beating the crap out of Cena. He came up on a tank and now he comes playing games. And you're telling me that AEW is obviously making these guys feel more legitimate? Brandon Cutler got to be honest with himself, and some of these wrestlers really got to, learn that constructive criticism isn't a guy about to shout out a racial slur. Like, come on. There gotta be something way better than this. Because I've been hearing all this news about Jim Ross being, like, completely getting all this heat over from AEW, all because he said something as a legitimate issue of the in-ring product, as the matches are a bit too choreographed. Some of the moves that they do are a bit overused, or they look completely weak, or there are no selling finishes that should be finishes with no storylines. Like, come on. And he said, I didn't call Steve Austin versus Rock to put up with this shit. Oh, God. Like, I don't know, why aren't these idiots taking this man's word seriously? He's literally made up for most of you guys' childhoods, and you coming around disrespecting him, and you have a jobber like Brandon Cutler bad-mouthing him. He's like the idiot of like a mafia that you pimp slap. You don't take his word for any semblance of I think the Young Bucks even pimp slap him when they're on the road. Like, he says something a bit stupid, he gets pimp slapped. Like, that idiot doesn't deserve any semblance of recognition. No one plays Dungeons and Dragons. You are a global AEW Dark Jobber. You're BTE superstar. You're not AEW superstar. You're just a Young Bucks friend, and I hope you get that over mind. You cancerous, face-painted, Braveheart, midget, complete asshole. You just don't get the business. You don't get what actually gets guys over. You don't get what makes the most of a televised program, because most of you guys are still over that indie mentality that you think this stuff can still get fans to watch. And sure, you think if this is getting harsh because I'm speaking about a wrestler that has to do this weekly, but that's like talking to your boss that he doesn't know how to make money while he's paying you. So just take that over mine, or at least a veteran that gets paid more than you in a job because he does the job better than you and he's been doing it for way longer. Brandon Cutler is just a sensitive jobber. And hopefully, you understand what he's saying when he says that they do the same damn spots. Because most of the matches that you see on AEW are sometimes the same, because nearly half the guys do Tope Suicida, a plancha from the outside, a random Canadian destroyer. Even Marco Stunt did one from the freaking top rope. Some of their movesets are a bit ununique, because they suit out of each other. They make like Luchasaurus, like a guy that should be getting over right now. He has decent size, he's long hair, the guy can do power moves. Why is he dressing up like a freaking lizard, coming around doing Hurricane Ranas? Canadian destroyers and super kicks. Why? Some of these guys don't even have to do that. Hangman Adam Page is supposed to be this Western brawler, and he comes around doing still topes, Canadian destroyers, Hurricane Ranas, kip ups. Like, come on, man. I know you want to display a bit of athleticism and try to surprise the crowd, but if people can already see that in WWE and guys like Keith Lee, Drew McIntyre, and their wrestling has their own issues, why some of these guys are going to the Performance Center, and that's a real issue. Get it through your thick head. That's not going to get over in mainstream public, especially when you assholes are getting pushed over a playoff game. I mean, an opening season game for the NBA. Be for real. That's all I got to say technically about that. Hopefully, like, Brandon Cutler and the rest of the guys in the AEW locker room take this opinion to heart. Because, Jim Ross actually knows what he's talking about. He's commented over the most popular things in pro wrestling history. He's been part of the business for several years. He obviously knows what he's talking about. He knows how to sell over a match. And if he has to call 17 Canadian destroyers and have Excalibur flapping his 17th chin to actually call a Michinoku driver, Fujiwara armbar over for a freaking near fall while he did 27 super kicks, probably Jim Ross is kind of speaking the truth. Because of how much this indie BS has been fluctuating over our wrestling for the last, I think, 15 or 20 years at this point. And sometimes it's fine to see cooler moves like that are done in the indies, but those should be, like, rarely done in, not mostly part of what makes up a 2-hour show. That's all I gotta say about that. Jim Ross was right. Brandon Cutler's a jobber idiot. And if some of the wrestlers, especially Cody, like, doesn't take some of this opinion to heart, then AEW is going to be a lost cause coming 2 to 3 years, and I hope not, because I really want this company to succeed. That's it for me. That probably is against or even with Jim Ross and his opinions over how he feels about the current AEW product. Because either if it's his opinion or not, and opinions are subjective, you can't tell he has a point. Just look at the popularity jump from what pro wrestling was in at least 2001 to how it was in 2020. We have lost over at least 15 or 20% of our freaking audience, or 60. Depending if I'm off, I'm right. WWE lost their majority audience by crap TV and also crap wrestling residing over the internet fans. Other than trying to make a primordial good roster, decent wrestling, and at least average storylines to at least advance the product. And it shows, and he saying that it's a lack of evolution because it's not really advancing any sort of storylines, characters, or anything else. All it is like big spot over big spot with no lack of selling. And this is over a group of small minority. And if you're producing a major product to only gross a minority of your fan base, like hardcore viewers, there's a problem, a major problem. It's not good. It segregates the casual fan base that obviously doesn't know much of what's going on. It tunes out most of the regular wrestling fan viewers because it denounces any semblance of selling. And it's just there to make sure somebody just does it because they think it's fun. When it's supposed to be wrestlers supposed to be selling themselves and they're not doing a good job of that, then people are going to tune out. And that's been done hundreds of other times before. Why now do it for the umpteenth time with no semblance of telling a story? So just take it as you will. Just a bit of backup footage, I guess. This just gets me agitated, man. You guys are You guys are grown men and women. as an experience, that man is literally one of the bigger guys to grace your business, grace AEW other than Chris Jericho. Because other than like Sting and Shaq, you guys barely got any primordial household names that fans know of. So just take that to heart. That's a coming from me, man. This time. I'm being for real this time.